there's some pieces in here that you just really cannot ignore. You know, you'd be a fool to ignore it. Especially in understanding this was around the same time that Rocky 3 came out, right? And you might say, what does Rocky 3 have to do with, you know, Conan the Barbarian? I'll explain it, right? So essentially, like I say, they see something, or they thief something by that's called the Eye of the Serpent. Conan and Subutai, they kill this like 50-foot snake, and they get this jade medallion that, you know, is the logo or the symbol for Thulsa Doom. And that's when Thulsa Doom realizes, that's when Conan realizes, like, yo, these are the same, you know, these are the same ones. Now, I should also say that Thulsa Doom represented a sect called the Cult of Set, S-E-T, Set. Okay, so that one should be pretty easy for a lot of you who've been listening to me for a long time. You know who Set is, you know who Osir is, you know who Osset is, you know who Heru is, right? So you see the intertwining, right? So we now see that there's a partnership between Conan, Subutai, and Valeria, you know, and they are three thieves that work well together. They get all this money from what they stole out of the temple, and then they go on, like, you know, they're gonna do the town up, man. They getting drugs, you know, what they call the Black Lotus. They getting drugs, they getting liquor, having sex. Conan and Valeria, they begin a relationship with each other. They pretty much actually fall in love. And what happens is that after a while, they find themselves surrounded by a king's soldiers. Long story short, right? So basically, the person's name is King Ostrich. Now, for the race piece, this gives you some of your big clues in all of this. King Ostrich. Where's my water? I'm almost done. Almost done with this jug. All right. So King Ostrich is a very interesting character in this experience, because what happens is that we find out, you know, when they bring him into the court, and they're thinking that, like, you know, they're gonna kill them because maybe he had something to do with the, you know, what was taken and things like that. But what it actually really is that King Ostrich's daughter, Yasmina, that's a Hebrew name, Yasmina. Today you call it Jasmine, but Yasmina. Yasmina is taken as a slave to Thulsa Doom. Now, this is when it becomes critical, because you got to remember, Thulsa Doom is like, James Earl Jones is like the only melanin-rich character in the entire movie. All of his followers are Caucasian. And the majority of what we see in his followers, the ones that are close and like in his inner court, whenever we see images of like his temple, they're all these young, attractive Caucasian girls, right? And one of the things that's said, and this is like where you get this is where it gets really fun from a racial perspective, is that you know, it's King Ostrich. Like, you can hear the hurt as he's explaining how Thulsa Doom, or basically what he talks about is how his daughter has fallen under the spell of Thulsa Doom, you know. And King Ostrich was played by Max von Sydow, something like that, but Max Sydow. But he employs the three as like mercenaries, because he's like, if you could sneak into the palace and steal those gems, then I know you can sneak in and get my daughter. But here's the issue. Most of the time when you hear about a virgin princess, it's a sacrifice. And specifically, That's not the issue here, that his daughter is going to be sacrificed. What he says is that he took my daughter and she will be his. The issue is that James Earl Jones, Thulsa Doom, is going to bed. He's going to sex King Ostrich's daughter. That's the issue. Okay? Now, again, I want to take you to another movie that came out in 1982, Rocky III. This is why I said earlier, like, well, what does that have to do with you know, there's a famous scene in Rocky, right, that I loved as a younger person watching. I thought it was so cool when, you know, when he's getting his statue revealed to him. They're in Philadelphia, and again, you should kind of get a sense when we're talking about Rocky, and Sylvester Stallone is cool. I got no issues with Sylvester Stallone, but there's a lot of fantasy, and I mean, and even he even said that. He was talking about one time the fight with God, what is that kid's name? The Irish dude. Why is it slipping my mind? Conor McGregor. Maybe he's Scottish. But anyway, and he was talking about that, and they were asking, well, who do you think is going to win? And he was like, come on, you know who I'm going for. I'm going for the underdog. And then he was like, and of course, everybody knows I live in fantasy land anyway. And I thought that was a cool little thing he said to TMZ, like, yeah. So anyway, there's a scene in Rocky 3 where they're doing that unveiling of the statue of Rocky in Philadelphia. And, Rocky's, they're saying that he's not running from Clubber. Clubber Lang is Mr. T. He was played by Mr. T in that particular film. And he was real animalistic. Like he had like no vocabulary. He's just grunt. Even when he's fighting, he's like, and that's basically how Conan was. Like his first couple lines in the movie was just, ah. That's the only sound he made. But, Clubber Lang is just like, what's your prediction for the tonight, for the fight tonight, Clubber? Pain. Like he doesn't have any kind of vocabulary. Let me get some more water here. My vocal cords are running out of steam. Okay. So there's a thing that Clubber Lang says, to Adrian, who's Rocky's wife, which is what really made Rocky want to fight him. Because Mickey, his trainer, was like, don't fight him, Rock. He's gonna beat you behind. He's an animal. You better stay out of that. Leave that alone. Don't do it. And Clubber Lang, he shows up at the unveiling of the statue, and he goes there. I'm sorry I'm laughing, but melanin rich men back in the days were just so much different than how they are now. And I miss the enthusiasm. I miss the charisma and the enthusiasm of how brothers were. But, he turns to Adrian and he says, hey, woman, I bet you dream about having a real man. Bring your pretty little self over to my apartment tonight. I'll show you what a real man is. And Rocky went crazy when he said that. He went crazy. He said, I'll show you a real man. So now we get into the ISIS papers. We get into Francis Cress Welsing now. When we're looking at the lamentations of King Ostrich saying he's going to take my daughter, she will be his. See, now we get into that Noir Mel territory, the book and the music project that I did. Now we're getting into that, right? So it's this fear of genetic annihilation that we're talking about now, right? We get into Birth of a Nation, 1914 with D.W. Griffith. Now we're talking about that, but the biggest problem with King Ostrich is not even that he's going to kill my daughter. he's going to sleep with my daughter. He's going to put his big black dingus inside of my daughter. The same thing with Rocky 3. It's not that you insulting me and you telling me I can't fight, but you are now coming on to my wife. And Adrian wasn't like, oh my goodness. She just like, huh. Huh. Interesting. You know, so it's that idea there again of the fear of a black penis. And what you understand with Conan, that was the secondary theme of the whole movie. That's why Thulsa Doom, because if you read the books, Thulsa Doom is not a melanin rich man. He's a half dead, or what they call an undead sorcerer. But we learn even by looking at the film that he's actually a god. You know, of course we see him transform into a snake and stuff at another time. But when we hear King Ostrich, he told, like he snitched, he ratted, he said everything. He said this demigod, Thulsa Doom. He called him a demigod. He let the cat out the bag. So we realize there's something different about Thulsa Doom. We also realize that the issue is that he's going to sleep with my daughter who's fallen under his spell. So we're obviously talking about a sexual spell, because when you see them and like their temples, they're all half dressed. There's that scene towards the end where it's like it's an orgy. And then there's also a cannibalist thing in there. They're eating humans. So there's that aspect as well, right? Now let's fast forward a little bit, right? So essentially King Ostrich was like, yo, you know, I'll pay you anything you want. Get my daughter. And he gives him some rubies right there on the spot. So Conan's comrades are like, let's just take these rubies and get out of here. Because Thulsa Doom is not something to play with. He's Clubber Lang. So let's just leave that alone. Take these rubies. Let's get out of town. Conan's not trying to hear it, because he's like, man, this dude killed my family. Like, no, at least So basically what he does is he leaves in the middle of the night. He leaves them and he goes to fight him by himself. An important scene. That's a very important piece, right? Because he's got that Ogun nature. You know, I'm going to take this head on, man, and I'm going to rip this dude's head off, right? So what happens is, long story short, Conan meets another wizard by the name of Akiro. And it's some more racist stuff there, you know, some against Asians there. But, you know, he meets Akiro, and Akiro is you know, like basically he explains some things about, you know, the sect or the cult of Thulsa Doom. And, you know, we start to understand that, okay, well, you know, they're basically, like I said, they're basically hippies, you know. And with that being said, Conan now disguises himself, as much as Arnold Schwarzenegger can, as one of the young people who's looking to join the cult of Thulsa Doom, or the Set cult, right? So this is where it gets important and interesting. Very interesting. Another critical point. So there's a scene where he meets a high priest from that sect, and the high priest is a predator. He's a sexual predator. So he sees Conan, and this is where you see that there's a sexual kind of theme to all this. He sees Conan, and Conan, I mean, it's kind of funny because it's like, you don't picture Arnold Schwarzenegger this way, but he's like, what's the matter, brother? And he's like, I am scared. You know, he's like, I want to go, but I am scared. So the guy is like, you know, he's like, oh, someone as big and strong and well developed as you. So he's clearly a dissexual, but he's a predatory dissexual because he's supposed to be a priest. And so Conan is like, is there some place we can talk where no one can see us? You know, he's like, can we talk over there where no one can see? And, you know, my Austrian accent isn't really there, but you get what I'm saying. I'm riding out the story, which I'm trying to bring you there. So he's like, yeah, sure, let's go over there. Thinking that now they're gonna it's gonna be some dookie loving, and so Conan's like, hey, so is that the only robe that you have? And basically, long story short, he beats him up or knocks him out, kills him. Because back in the 80s, one shot, the guy's out. We don't know if he's knocked out, dead, or what. That's just how the 80s was. So he hits him, the guy falls out. I think he hits him twice. And he takes his robes and puts them on. So now you see that this cult is a cult of sexual immorality. So they went from being these violent marauders to being these sexual deviants who are now preying on people. And the deviance I'm referring to is the predatorial nature, right? We can add all the other stuff in there however you want, depending on what your spiritual moral perspective is. But these are, they're supposed to be peace-loving hippies, but this whole movement is built underneath a war machine. So much knowledge in there for you. How do you make a soldier that goes into a foreign country and brutalizes and tortures other people? Where you get reports of soldiers from this country going into other countries and raping citizens. Where did that anger and where did that sense of abuse come from? It's all intentional. They know how to create the perfect soldier. You create an individual that has so much violence, so much anger pent up inside of them, and then you introduce a sexual element where now you violate them sexually. Then you put a gun in their hand and then you send them out to go do your dirty work. What happens? They become the most vicious, the most violent, the most heartless, uncaring soldier that you could ever ask for. You see, that's how you make a soldier in this hemisphere, in this culture.